microphone there, and if you want to just state your name and the company you're representing, please. Perfect.
Good afternoon, Council. It's Shauna and Art Lawson from McSweeney Associates. So
they just have a short 3-hour presentation.
yeah. Hope you brought dinner. There we go. Okay, well, we're very pleased to be here. It's been about a 6-month journey, but hopefully we've got a strategy that will work for you and take you to where you want to go. So, so the agenda for this presentation, it'll be fairly short. Hopefully we'll have some discussion and questions. So first of all, why a strategy, what was done over the last 6 months. Then a bit of a recap that you've seen already, but just thought it would be good to refresh everybody's mind. What the Wheatland by the Numbers is the analysis that was done early in the summer. And then the top strategic actions, the top 10, not to be was a fan of Letterman, and what the next steps will be. And then we can open it up and have discussion. So why do a strategy? So it's all about building a strong foundation and having something that council can use its resources strategically with. So whether those resources are staff time, funding, your planning your budget, it gives you that that framework to do it with, and it also creates a direction. And it's like having a map. How do you know? How can you get where you want to go if you don't have a map? It creates positive community and allows change through what you're looking for a diversified and resilient economy. So what was done? So we started off here in June. We did a county tour with Ellen. We reviewed a lot of your documents, including the past economic development strategy and MDP and other documents that were on your website. We did a data analysis using various data sources on what are your strongest sectors, where there were declines, and what your workforce is all about. From that, as the situation analysis was prepared and presented to you in June, then we did the consultations. So we consulted businesses, economic development stakeholders, such as the Community Futures, Bow Valley College, the province, other partners like the town, possible partners, and the Siksika Nation. And then we had the working session, which many of you were at and gave really valuable input to. And from all of that, we wrote the economic development strategy. So I'll pass this to Art to take you through stuff that you've already seen, but just will refresh your memory.
Yeah, thanks very much, and I'd like to thank you. We really enjoyed doing this project, and we appreciate the opportunity to do it with you. So just a quick recap of some of the analysis that was done. I think there's a few things that stand out. One is that your population has continued to grow in 3 successive census periods, and that's different than many of the rural municipalities in Alberta. I think you were less injured by the recession in the oil industry because your economy, and you'll see a bit more about that later, that you're less oil and gas dependent than the other counties and municipal districts in the province. Your population is slightly older. It's not a big deal, but perhaps that's a reflection of the large farm population that are typically a bit older than the population at large. There's I think that's probably the main things here. One thing that stood out a little bit was the bit of a differential in median income compared with the province. So it's well, actually, yeah, you're a bit lower than the province. So that's gives you something to aim for, and I think some of that comes from perhaps the way incomes are reported. That farm, there are some good paying jobs out there, but there's probably room to add a few more. And the labor force, I think you've got a pretty substantially, like a good labor force. The employers we talked to said for a lot of the occupations they're seeking, they're able to find who they need. But for higher skilled labor, often they'll have to recruit in Calgary and bring people out. So it's there's a bit of a place to work on there in terms of upskilling. And particularly as time goes on, I think all of the industries are going through a transition where they're becoming more reliant on technology to do their work, and it means upgrading some of the workforce you already have. I mentioned earlier about you're somewhat more recession resistant than some of the other counties in the province. That when you look at it, where does the wealth come from? So these are exports. This is I think we've explained this before, but this is products sold outside this municipality. So it's not necessarily exports out of the country, but it's exports in the sense that it's money that flows back into this municipality. And so the big ones, pesticide, fertilizer. So there's some very big operators. Farms are right up there. And I think some surprises down here that the performing arts companies, so they're as big or they're in the same range as the wood processing and warehousing and farm product merchandising are all in a similar range. So that's I think that was a revelation for some people, that it's you've got a bit of an emerging opportunity there. And Shauna mentioned the qualitative analysis. That was document review, interviews with a number of key stakeholders. So it included provincial representatives, Community Futures, Chamber of Commerce. There was a number of organizations that were included in the sample. Businesses, yeah, so there's a significant number of businesses, including we had good response from the bigger employers, that they were quite willing to talk to us. And in the surveys, this is the population at large, is over 80 from that sample. And so when you combine those two sources, the qualitative and quantitative, so this is the analytics as well as what people's opinions are, come up with this strengths, challenges, opportunities, aspirations, and results. So in terms of strengths, you have a good population of existing businesses, and they're good employers. That the churn rate, that is, people, they don't turn over their employees at a high rate that you'll find in some instances. So great location. You got highways, the Canamex corridor, railway, and so on. So, and you're close to the airport. And I think the rail is an opportunity that can be perhaps even more done with it. The communities with friendly people, a small town lifestyle, that came up in a number of the conversations we had when you ask people what do they really value about the region, and I think it was sort of the rural character. strong support to buy local where possible, and a rural community with sort of unique culture, tourism opportunities, and perhaps a bigger variety of things than many rural communities. And you've been doing some things yourselves in terms of environmentally progressive things, the plastic recycling that's been quite successful, and the Rosebud pilot with wastewater treatment that's yielded some interesting results, and perhaps can be used in other places. And I think it builds your reputation as a place that's been fairly responsible. You're close to a big urban center and urban markets, so you're not that far out of Calgary. So it's in terms of attracting labor as well as selling products and attracting tourism. That gives you a fairly ready market for that kind of thing, and reasonably priced housing compared with some of the bigger communities like Calgary around you. Industrial and commercial land is also generally lower cost than in the nearby communities. So a strong agricultural community, and I think that speaks to the rural character, and generally the employers are happy with the workforce they've been able to attract. Challenges, things that came up were lacking of upgrading new infrastructure in the settlement areas, and that may be a byproduct of being more proactive in terms of asset management and maintenance, where things are more scheduled rather than waiting till they break. So you can anticipate the useful life of many things and be ready for that. Kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit. And there are a few viable locations for businesses to set up. Eric was out and did a bit of a tour with Alan and some other folks, just looking at development properties. And I think this was what he was finding, was that there's sort of a lack of good service land particularly for industrial. There are some potential residential sites that would take a little less work. Red tape, and again, this is perhaps just a reflection of there being some lack of continuity, I guess would be the best way of describing it, in terms of the sort of the planning and permitting staff. And so it'd be good to have more of a set process, and I think that comes out in some of the recommendations later. And that's fed into this perception that the county's not friendly towards business, but I think it's more a byproduct of sort of that lack of continuity and consistent process of people's expectations when they come with a proposal, how it's going to be dealt with. And perception of the council not involved in community decision-making, municipal planning, agricultural service boards, that kind of thing. A number of people mentioned subdivision encroachment onto agricultural lands sort of reduces the viability of the really large agricultural operations, and you can run into more potential conflicts in terms of competing land uses. So downtowns, main streets, that came up as I mentioned one of the challenges just in terms of the revitalization of some of the core areas in the settlements. County views it viewed as a place to go through to get somewhere. So it's need to give, particularly if for some of the businesses that are here, if they're relying on tourism or even in terms of retail, it's giving them more reasons to stop and shop and spend some time here. Broadband is an issue when you get outside some of the bigger settlement areas, and so that'll be a requirement. I think it's in just about all kinds of businesses and modern farms that they do require more access to high-speed internet. There's a problem with petty crime, sort of theft, vandalism, drug trade, that kind of thing. Competition from Calgary, I think, particularly for some kinds of development, and it's hard to say if that's just, I think as you begin to market your opportunities out here that it's just to be conscious of what goes on in Calgary, and there may actually be opportunities coming the other way, that is to attract businesses from Calgary out to here. And difficult to find qualified workers locally. So this tends to be the more high-skilled positions. So things like engineers, accountants, that kind of thing are a little more difficult to find locally, that they generally have to be recruited from Calgary. And new residents that many of the employers are saying as they attract new people to their organization, that many of them don't live locally, that they live in Strathmore or Calgary, or they live in some of the communities around, but not necessarily in the county. Opportunities. So this goes back to dealing with the challenges. It's so community development, arts, tourism, culture, agritourism. There are some interesting things that we heard about from the open farm days, and I think there's chances to build on that. Increase the diversity of housing stock, and I think there are opportunities there, as well as it deals with some of those challenges about housing and getting people to stay and live here. And the quality of place. So that's getting particularly younger people may be looking for different attributes in the communities where they're going to settle. And so it's kind of focusing on those attractive features to keep particularly younger residents settling down here. And downtown re-energizing, so that goes back into the community development to some degree. And creating opportunities for economic development and so on, and as part of that Main Street and core area redevelopment. So it isn't just streetscaping and facade improvement. It's really looking at those businesses that would be located in the core areas of communities. And there's a perceived opportunity, I think there could be, in terms of value-added food processing with the Trans-Canada Rail for shipping. So it's taking advantage of your location as well as some of the industry that's already here. Marijuana operations and processing, it's hard to know what remains in that industry, but I understand you've been approached and there may be some opportunities coming. Greenhouses, you have good access to energy and that sort of thing. That's one of the biggest costs in terms of greenhouses. Logistics and transportation, again, taking advantage of the location that you've got here, that you're on some main corridors, rail and so on, so it is a chance to build on that. You've got some beautiful countryside here, and whether there's some year-round development around Eagle Lake. Oh, okay. Sort of entrepreneurs, new businesses, investors, businesses attracted from Calgary. Aspirations. So this is what people said they would like to see, and so that includes things they don't want to lose. And so it's celebrating Wheatland County's sort of unique agriculture, rural character. And so I think that's something that people really value, and it'd be good if you can, as you develop and grow, that you keep that in mind. Diversity of population, including young families or retirees and young people. So it's increased diversity, diversified job opportunities, bustling villages, and experiential holidays. So it's some things that people would like to see, as well as things they don't wish to lose. And I think the result is that they're looking for safe, sustainable communities where people can live, work, and play, living in a rural, small town lifestyle, recreational activities that are readily accessible, strong rural, local foods, arts, culture, entertainment, that kind of thing, keeping the friendly, welcoming people living in Wheatland County, Thriving economy is open for business and growth and strong diversified agricultural community. So I'll turn this back to Shauna to talk about the working session.
Thanks. So, and so as I said, we went through the working session, so brought everything, all that input. So it was about 230 some people that were consulted going into this strategy. So through both, through the sessions that we held, open houses, the online survey, and the one-on-one interviews. So you've got a very large pool of people and opinions and businesses that were consulted. So out of our findings, 4 themes emerged. So one was community development was very important, investment readiness of the county, industrial development, how do you get the industrial development, and the development of a specific sector, which is tourism. And the total actions that came out were 28, which will be, and it will be in a work plan. But the top 10 strategic priorities are, so first of all, you need a warm body to implement. There are 28 actions. There's nobody to implement those actions, really. And your EDAC is as good as they are and very committed. They've got full-time jobs as well. So the first strategic priority that we identified is to have a full-time staff member to implement this strategy. Because if there isn't a budget, if there isn't a warm body, nothing will happen, and this will unfortunately become a document gathering dust on your shelves. Number 2 is do a thorough assessment of basically your utilities, and which includes broadband, to ensure that they will support business and residential growth, and proactively budget for them and have an asset management plan. Because if you don't have that infrastructure to support business, if you don't have shovel-ready land, which is serviced by gas, electricity, and water, wastewater, nothing's going to happen. We worked with another municipality, and about 6 weeks ago, and they had what they considered shovel-ready land because they had electricity and gas. Well, the only businesses that were looking to go there were storage facilities, and that doesn't produce jobs. So it's got to be a fully serviced land. And so broadband is a utility. It has, the CRTC has deemed it to be an essential service. So this is to create a plan by 2020 to roll out broadband access across the municipality, because you are competing with municipalities who are doing just that, that they are rolling out broadband across their municipality. And so if a business is looking to locate here or there, they're going to choose where they can have broadband.
Can I just clarify, that's to roll out the plan, not to have broadband throughout the county?
Yeah, that's why I underlined plan.
It's going to take a little bit longer, so I wanted Shauna to make sure that you guys understood that there's no way we'd get broadband to everybody in 2 years, right? So
No.
it's to unroll a plan, and then council would have to consider how they would fund that plan. So.
Yeah. And there may be funding coming from the government by then, once you have a plan. But if you've got a plan, you're ready to go, compared to some other municipalities. So this is kind of a long-winded one, but you get better buy-in if you engage the residents and businesses to create the vision to go forward. What do they want their communities to look like? We got some really strong responses about they want to keep that rural feel. They want to keep, but they want their communities to be more vibrant. And so what do they want the county to look like in the future? And that's an imperative step for council to engage the community in that vision. Because it also makes it much easier once they've given input to implement as you go along, because you said this, now we're delivering it, get on the wagon, right? And so building on the Wheatland County Community Visual Identity and Brand and using that on signage, wayfinding, communications, we've got a feeling from a lot of respondents that they really don't know what's happening, the communications, what is happening with the county. And it's also a matter of getting people to stop. Getting them to realize if they're driving down the Trans-Canada that there are these things to do, that there are wayfinding signs to take them to, spots where they can do things, whether it's agritourism or whether it's going to Rosebud or whether it's going to the river. But there's no wayfinding system presently. And it's pretty basic, but developing an online business directory so that you can search for businesses that you want to see. This can be for other businesses too. That they are presently buying something from Vancouver that they might be able to buy locally. And potential investors want to know what sort of businesses are already here, because they could be their supply chains, it could be competitors, but maybe they could do bulk buying with or whatever. And business retention and expansion, there was a strong feeling that there was not a strong connection between local businesses and the county and council. So a BRNE, as we call it, Business Retention and Expansion Program, would have someone from the county, the Economic Development Officer, and sometimes with the Reeve or a counselor, go out and just talk to the businesses and listen to their concerns and listen to their aspirations, because they may be wanting to expand, because 80% or more of your new jobs will come from those businesses. So how can you facilitate that? And you won't know how to facilitate that unless you talk to them.
So just further to that, so the game plan that I have in mind is when we bring the Economic Development Officer on board under the General Manager of Community Services, likely in May, one of their first tasks would be to undertake this. So to set the groundwork for this, we've made an application through the CARES grant to do a business retention and expansion project, and that would be 50% funded through that CARES grant. So the granting body, which is the province of Alberta, actually contacted me yesterday, because my name's on the grant, obviously, and just wanted an update on things. So I think it looks fairly favorable. We know we have support from the local representative, Lisa Houle. I think some of you have met her when we had the engagement session here on October 11th. And she's very supportive of this project. Actually, she's the one that mentioned to me applying for the CARES grant. So this will also set the groundwork for success moving forward. So just so you know, so the idea would be the Economic Development Officer, as Shauna was said, would go around with the area councilor or the Reeve to area businesses and talk to them and find out what we need to do, how we can help their business, because we need to support the businesses that are here first and then try to attract new businesses, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a simple but a very effective process. And the other, number 8 is to undertake an industrial land market study and location analysis as I was speaking of earlier, to have shovel-ready land. So if you have an investor coming and they're looking at 4 different places they want to put something, they can come here and they can be, you know, in business in 6 months. If they have to put in utilities, you're looking at 2 years, and that's not what businesses want.
So we've had sorry, Shauna.
Yeah.
I've had 4 requests in the last 3 or 4 years, 4 so-called shovel-ready lands, 1 for a canola crushing plant, 1 at spur, like railway spurs, all that kind of stuff. Certainly had a good suitable location, but no utilities, no railway spur, no road access. So to get all that stuff in place wouldn't work for them. They wanted to be starting construction on a facility within 8 to 10 months, right? So we lose opportunities there. So there has to be an opportunity, I guess, or a position for council and the county to say we're going to invest in some of this stuff, have it ready, and then we can jump on these opportunities. Because if I would have had ready land, I probably could have got 3 out of those 4 opportunities in the county. Or local employment is what it's going to generally spur. I mean, they're not huge. Canola crushing plant's not a huge tax take, but it's the people that we can get jobs in the area for. So.
One location we have identified that would be part of this, should be part of this study, is just east of Gleason, because you've got Highway 1, you have rail, and you have water and wastewater there. That capacity that you still need to build, you know, around Carsland and other areas. So that would be, you know, a prime area for investors, and would also assist in new development in the Gleason area. Number 9, so working on measures to build Wheatland County's reputation as a business-friendly place. So we had a lot of feedback that the perception, whether that's true or not, the perception of Wheatland County is that it is not open for business, and has, you know, and has not been amenable to different investors due to the change of planning staff. We've heard from some of the people or companies who've tried to invest, is they, you know, they're told they need this study and this study and this study. They do them, cost them 50 grand, and then a new planner comes in and says, oh, I need this and this and this, or I need this redone. So the system is inconsistent. We recommend having a system which is consistent, has set kind of a set timeline, and it doesn't matter who your planner is.
So also subsequent to that, I've engaged the services of TSI Consulting to come in, do a review of the Community Services Department, which include planning, development, and the Parks and Rec area. And they will come in, they're going to start doing interviews next week of staff and the public and clients that we deal with, and they'll come up with recommendations on processes, because that's been an issue for quite some time, before I got here, I think. But so they're very well versed in it. The people that are on this project, 2 of the people have extensive experience in municipal recreation, municipal planning, and municipal development. So I'm confident by the end of January we'll have a report that'll give us some fairly solid guidelines. May not have all the processes and procedures in place, but it'll give some guidelines to that. So.
And that, you know, includes being an ambassador, and that's all of you guys. And all the staff have to see themselves as economic development ambassadors. And there are rules that need to be followed, and you guys need to make sure they are followed. But from the front desk person, when that investor walks in the door, to, you know, being taken, you know, around by one of you and welcomed, that it's an ambassador function. And finally, number 10. You've got some great neighboring potential partners, and of course the town of Strathmore, Badlands, Siksika Nation, who are, you know, following a fairly aggressive investment or building an investment portfolio, and develop new tourism products. There could be also some other businesses that would employ workforce from the county and the neighbors, because you've got to realize that political borders, businesses don't care about that. They want to know where their workforce is coming from and where they're going to sell their product. So, you know, engaging with your neighbors, and they have objectives. You know, we have worked with actually one of your neighbors, and you've got very similar objectives. So, so you know, open that dialogue and plan for that. So, conclusion of our report is, you know, growth is going to come to Wheatland County, and it has, and actually you are in maybe an enviable spot. Is you don't have, you know, growth hasn't come in here in an unbridled fashion, partially because there is this perception of not being business friendly. But now you have the opportunity to manage that growth and not have investors, you know, determine what your county is going to look like. You have a strategic plan to determine yourselves what you want the county to look like in terms of its businesses and where you're going to develop. So you should proactively manage that. And we tell that to councils all the time. You're not at the beck and call of the investor. You can guide them. You can make the case as to why they should develop in the areas that you have deemed they should develop. And build that investment-friendly reputation. And you can only do that by doing. Build upon your sector's of strength. Obviously, agribusiness, agri-food, and you've got this growing arts and culture sector, which is very unique for Alberta. You should really capitalize on that. But make sure, if you can, to develop, this is where a lot of counties get themselves into trouble, because they develop new settlements that down the road, it sounds really good to begin with, but down the road you've got to service that infrastructure. You've got to service, but you have existing infrastructure in your existing settlements that you should build around rather than starting new settlements. And we advise that all the time, because you see some areas where these new settlements, these residential areas in the middle of nowhere, you know, 20 years on, they're a liability, and they cost a lot of money to fix that infrastructure and maintain it. So use your existing settlements as your growth nodes, and work with your neighbors to capitalize on those objectives, and so you've got a bigger pie, basically. So that's you know, kind of the crux of our conclusions. And now it's, oh, sorry, next steps. So on Thursday, I'll be sitting down with Alan to go through basically a work plan of how this is going to happen. And so that would be, you know, if and when you hire a new EDO, but it's not just the EDO's responsibility. When we go through it, it says, you know, different people from different departments need to cooperate in that, whether it's planning, whether it's you, and there, or whether you want to bring in Bow Valley College or whatever. There are several items there, and it's not just their responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility. And then client aftercare, we're always at the end of the phone. We're just down the road in Okotoks. We, you know, we're open to answering any other questions or advice. So now let's open the floor. And
Art and Shauna, I want to thank you for the work that you guys and your firm have done on this plan. It gives us some really comprehensive information and a good action plan going forward. Does anybody have any questions?
No, but I will move as information.
We actually have to approve
the
Oh, do
report.
we?
Well, you could
Or
certainly
we-
accept the presentation as
As information.
Okay. Okay. Discussion on Jason's motion? All in favor?
Then I'll move that council approve the economic strategy report as presented.
Anybody have any questions? Comments? All in favor of Jason's motion? Motion's carried.
Internet, what would be an acceptable speed, upload speed, download speed?
Well, I mean, most municipalities, if they're going for it, they're going 1 gig up and down. And that's pretty standard. Like if you look at ONET in Olds, is, you know, that's what they're aiming for, because, you know, other countries are even past that now. But, you know, if you can do that, you know, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's a moving, I would say it's a moving target. You know, other places where we've worked, like if you went back 5 years or 10 years, they're saying, you know, a couple megs down and up was good, but, you know, the needs seem to grow faster than the capacity. So it's one of those things of, I think, certainly, I think you'd have some design work done as part of the plan. And, you know, we have talked to some communities that have done that where they've come up with sort of the design requirements, but it keeps moving. And a lot will depend on the kind of infrastructure you choose to go for, whether it's wireless or it's, you know, are there areas where it's feasible to have fiber, and that maybe that's where industrial development would go, where the needs are going to be the highest, and everybody else gets something that's a little bit different, not quite as fast, but a lot faster than what they have now.
CRTC has mandated 50 megabytes download and 10 megabytes upload for, I think it's 90% of the Canadian population. I might be wrong on the 90%. And then they've said realistically they're aiming for targets of at least half of that for everybody, is what the latest that I've heard. So, and I know.
Yeah, and you've got Olds just up the road and probably would not have redone, but they learned lots of lessons, and that ONET up is now retired.
Yeah.
So that's what, 100? How fast is it?
Ours was. Have your different levels.
Just did a speed check on the county here, it's 8 on our Wi-Fi, and through TELUS it's 56.
What's your one?
Wi-Fi in the building. 8.96 and TELUS is 56.6. So
And
I'm
often
a
at
firm
home,
believer in the TELUS hub because it's phenomenal for out in the country for us.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't come close to 100.
No.
Yeah.
just for an update for council, I did touch base with Alan Martins, just to see where we were at with that dark fiber initiative that we had talked about. And he did let me know that they were approved for CARES funding to do more research into the project. So that was a $30,000 grant, which will need to be matched for a total of $60,000. And then they are discussing just maybe some pilot with some municipalities that are willing to jump in right off the bat. He said he's kind of dropped the ball a little bit on it and hasn't been putting a lot of time and effort into that project, but probably. But I will keep council up to date if I hear more updates on that project as well. All right. Yeah, thank you
thank
very
you.
much. We appreciate it. Let's move into Deputy Reeves' report.
I got it on the, oh, lights on. I got some on the server. A couple things I wanted to add. On Thursday or Friday this week, there's a meeting at Rosebud for Symbiotic. And at the time when they were planning the meeting, I was planning not to be here, but I'm here now, so, and I know that's the same day you have a meeting in Three Hills, so I will be available to go to that meeting in Rosebud for sure.
The meeting in Three Hills, I think, was canceled.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And then during the convention, I had a short visit with MPE. And during the course of our discussions, they informed me that they're in the middle of an engineering project. I don't remember the place. I could find out particulars. But just so council's aware, they are engineering a LG pilot project in another municipality, same type of thing as Symbiotic. So they're not the only players in the sandbox from the sounds of it. And also, at the time we filled out our reports on November 26th, that's all the stuff I did prior. On the 28th, I had an opportunity as alternate to attend a WFC, known at FCSSAA conference in Edmonton. Hammer said in her report of the opening remarks. But for me, the most moving presentation was by Leslie Unwin. She was voted the #2 most influential woman in the world, followed by our previous #1 was Hillary Clinton, that's voted by the New York Times. She had, I think, the most innovative program I've ever seen. The conference was named The Times Are Changing, underlined by equal, thinking equal to the races, sexes, accessibility, just being equal. And her thing was early childhood intervention for a course from 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, and 5 to 6. Those are the formative years where your opinions are formulated for the rest of your life. And they can't say ingrained, but maybe that's what they're doing, is your feelings and your outlook on people, on being equal, just being a better person. As she said, you are trained to hate in this world. And they try and overcome that. I thought it was. And Canada, Alberta, Peace River, is one of the leading places in the world that is pushing this course. And as they do it, it just started in 2017, as they roll it out, neighboring schools and parents find out about it, and it just keeps growing that way. Canada's the only one in the Northern Hemisphere that is doing the course. And in the South, they have all kinds, probably 10 or more. And this is since 2017, so it is growing, and I'm thinking you'll see a lot more of it. And yeah, so I went to that, and yeah, that's the end of my report. If there's not any questions, I'll move it.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion carried. Division 1. I believe we had a report circulated earlier today.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't get it in on time. I did not make it in that night. And it's pretty short. I was missing for RMA. I was in New Brunswick, so disappointed that I missed that. But if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. If not, I will move my report as presented.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion carried. Division 3.
Yes. Talking about broadband, I just about didn't get this here. Had to go to Rocky Ford Town Council to get my internet went down for the weekend and the week. I do want to add something. Town of Strathmore have let me get the exact wording of it. Strathmore Tourism Development Focus Group that I'm going to volunteer with. I talked to Bob Sobel about it, and yeah, I'm going to go on that, see what it's like, it'll be a volunteer thing. And yeah, I think the rest of a quick look here. So for the economic development, we are looking at those webinars now. That'll kind of come in nicely with this new strategic planning for development. They're going to be held at Cheadle, Lyalta, Rosebud, Standard, Rocky Ford, Gleason, I believe. And we have them going forward in the new year, January, February. Just trying to work that out. And that's about it. Any questions for me? Then I'll present it as read.
My report is pretty straightforward. I think the only thing I really want to bring attention to, and I should have probably done, just thinking about this, but at RMA, in one of the breakout sessions with the Indigenous Communities and Economic Development, evidently FCM partners with CDI and CANDO, and we can get a grant. They have a I think it's CANDO, has the ability to reach out to the nation, and I believe we can get funding for that. And I should have brought something forward to this, but I would like the direct administration to look into that and see if that, because I think that's probably our best way to do this, because they've done 7 of these projects already, and just to get us, just to see if there is any common ground, and then to do that common ground. So, like I said, I should have brought this up. I should have done this somewhere else, but I know that I would like direct administration to look into this, see if it's viable. Sorry, FCM at RMA there was a breakout session. FCM has gives grants through CEDI and CANDO, and it's for municipalities to work with Indigenous communities. I can give you I can send you I'll send you the different deals. It's on the FCM deal, and and just look into it. I should have done something more than that. I apologize. And with that, I'll move my report.
believe we had one of them already, so there might be some information in here, but I think Jennifer was CAO then. FCM come and did that. Yeah. We had 2 meetings. But yeah, it could start again, for sure. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
My report's all there. One of the highlights, I guess, one of the things at WRC, there was a discussion about, and I forgot to put this again, apologize. WRC South Truck Fill Station, the irrevocable line of credit. Is that how you say it? The 105,000. They're having trouble getting that line of credit. I'm just wondering if we can direct administration to look into maybe possibility of waiving that because they're like a sister company of ours. That's something that council would want to consider.
Administration doesn't have the ability to waive that, that's a policy, so
I
but
know
council
yeah, yeah,
can do that. So if
yeah.
you want to make a motion, council can certainly do that.
Just, and I actually would like to make that motion because they're having difficulties doing it. Trying to secure a line of credit and being that it is, I'll say it's a sister company of Wheatland County, I think that would be something that we could waive and it's really of no cost to us at all. It's just for the landscaping, I believe, is this? Is there anything I'm missing there, Glenn, or?
No, I think
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I think the figure was 105,000 and change. Basically was an irrevocable line of credit is what they're looking for. So if we could get the staff to do an RFD to get the information finalized, that's something, but I'd like to make a motion to have staff into this, get us the final details. Is that appropriate, Alan?
Council makes a motion to not require that deposit, and we can move forward on that basis.
Okay. Well, then, let me read it. Let me redo that. I will make the motion that council waive the letter of credit for the landscaping portion of the South Truck Fill Station. For WRC, Wheatland Regional Corporation. Roughly 105,000.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? All in favor of Scott's motion?
And then any questions you have about the rest of my report? If not, I will make a motion to accept this information.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion carried. Division 7 report was included with our package.
I'll move Ben's report.
I suspect there's no questions because we probably can't answer them. All in favor? Motion carried. Just a note, there's also that SEWA briefing there as well included with his report. Alan, your CAO report.
My CAO report is attached to the package, or included with the package. I just want to note that I'm going to be away from December 14th to January 6th inclusive, and Mr. Mike Zier will be in charge. And period from December 15th to the 22nd, I will not have access to computer or phone.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions about the CAO report?
Ellen, I just wanted to ask on that engagement with First Nations and economic reconciliation in Calgary. How was that well received?
There was well over 300 people there at the Petroleum Club in Calgary. It was very well received. There was a good round table of Mr. J.P. Gladue and Tim Fox, and it was facilitated by Dave Tucaro. He is basically president and general manager of Negan Development Corporation and Tuco Contracting, which does a lot of work in the Fort McMurray area for the oil sands, about $84 million a year. I sat with a couple of individuals, one for, they used to be with the Mount Royal University, another one that's involved with northern satellite stations. And yeah, it was really good. I actually suggested that they get Mr. Gladue to come in and speak to the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board about economic development and First Nations, because Mr. Gladue is a First Nations individual who is now employed with, I think it's, I don't know if it says on the sheet, but I believe he's employed with Ontario Hydro. So very knowledgeable in the ongoing negotiations and economic challenges in Northern Ontario and what's going on there. So yeah, it was really good, a really good event. It's the first one I've been to, a breakfast meeting with the ICD. They usually have one every couple months in Calgary. So I'm encouraging Reeve Link to maybe attend a future one if it's available on our schedule. It's good networking as well. So it's only like an hour and a half out of your schedule too, so in the morning. So it's really good, yeah.
Any other questions? Can we have a motion to accept? All in favor? Motion carried. There's an update on the strategic priorities.
So, Madam Chairman, this should look fairly familiar to Council, as we did discuss it at the last Planning and Priorities meeting. So I've taken the May strategic priorities chart that was revised in May from our capacity review and modified with basically things that are still outstanding. So the identified 5 on the list: utility cost recovery, municipal development plan, intermunicipal development plans, and intermunicipal collaboration frameworks, Gleason School, recreation parks and facilities plan, and crime prevention is the top 5. So I've had our communications professional, Mackenzie, update the corporate priorities as well to reflect those 5 topics. As you can see, utility cost recovery, we're still kind of waiting on Wheatland Regional Corporation and their budget, and I believe that some of that information will be coming forward on December 18th, which unfortunately I won't be able to attend, but my counterpart, Mr. Zier, will be attending in my absence. Also with the MDPs and growth management strategy review, there's really been nothing done on that yet, so my plan is to start moving that forward in the new year with staff and the consultant BNA, and also with the Gleason School options, as we talked before. That's kind of a bit of a few challenges there, as we know. So that's kind of an update on the priorities.
Any questions? Can we have a motion to accept the strategic priorities update as information? So moved. All in favor? Motion carried. There's a resolution for us to take forward to RMA regarding composting.
So I wanted to speak a little bit about this resolution, Madam Chair, if I may. We added a whereas, the last whereas on the first page of the resolution. I'm not sure, I apologize, I don't know what number it is on the package. But
It's on page 175.
It says, whereas more municipalities are implementing an organic collection program across the province, composting facilities will most likely increase in numbers and be sited close to communities. Updating the code would be a proactive approach that would help municipalities with siting these operations and provide the assurance the impacts on the communities are minimized. That whereas actually came from Alberta Environment, our local people in Calgary. I received an email yesterday from our local representative, James Jorgensen, and Mr. Jorgensen's indicated they've actually gone up the chain of command to I think 3 or 4 levels up, and they're all supportive of this resolution. Of course, they won't necessarily come out publicly because it's not in their purview to do that. I've also forwarded this on to the town of Strathmore, my counterpart there, James Thackeray. So Mr. Thackeray indicated to me that he would be talking with his council in regards to this resolution so that they may bring a similar resolution to the fall convention at AUMA next year. In addition, I've also talked with waste management representatives last week in regards to this, and I've also kept Green for Life, or GFL, in the loop on this as well, and they indicated some support for this as well moving forward. So that's kind of where this is at. So.
Are there any questions or comments? Please pass, oh, sorry.
Just comment, this is basically the key to everything, is that these documents that Alberta Environment have utilized to kind of help the municipalities are very weak, so this is definitely needs to be done. And I'm glad that staff is doing this, and definitely has my support.
Please thank the staff that worked on it. I think the resolution we took forward at the fall session was really well received, and it was very well researched, and please thank the staff that worked on this one. Again, it looks really comprehensive and very solid, so. Yeah, ours it really was exceptional, the resolution that came forward. He did a great job. We need a motion to approve this submission to the February RMA zone meeting.
I'll make the motion that council approve the submission of a resolution to the February RMA zone meeting requesting that the RMA advocate for the updated provincial regulations for compost facilities.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. We have an RFD regarding Planning, Economic Development, and Community Services Department. Oh, sorry, it's their actual report.
I don't have anything in particular to add to this report, Madam Chairman, but I can certainly answer any questions that there may be from council in regards to this report.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
I move that council accepts the October report from Planning and Economic Development.
All in favor? Motion carried. Following that, there's an RFD regarding some playground equipment for Glacian. I think Jason moved it. I'll double check with Margaret.
So, Madam Chairman, Mr. Dave Rhymes is here if there's any questions. He's not going to go through the report, but if there's any questions, he can certainly answer them the next three, I believe.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us, Dave. So I do have one question. Can you just clarify that location? That's at the south end of the school playground.
Yes, Madam Chair.
I'm just wondering about the location, because I know when we did the public consultation, there was some indication a lot of the equipment that we took out was in that other playground location. I'm wondering if we might be able to do some consultation on where that could go, or if I know Councillor Wilson was quite set on where he thought it should go. I don't know council's thoughts.
I'm just wondering, can we put this request for decision back a couple of months? We can't put the playground, my reasoning is we cannot put the playground equipment in until spring. And with curb funding coming up, that maybe the people in Gleason will apply for this, and they will apply for the playground equipment. Because as you know, I am an adamant supporter of community-funded stuff, right? Like, and I'm just giving people, and even if the curb funding at that point in time they do not choose to use that for the playground equipment, we still have to, so if we set this back for 4 months, I'm pretty sure the playground equipment is probably readily available. Like you don't order it 6 months ahead of time, do you? Like a set of swings?
No, there's usually about 6 weeks lead time for ordering it to delivery type stuff.
Donna?
My understanding is that though that the community thinks it's coming, why would they apply for it in the curb if they think it's, or have they been told
So
that?
I've started to try and disseminate like the change from council. I am going to reiterate like I'm deeply frustrated with this process. I know I shared that at the committee of the whole. But the fact that the council approved a budget with the funds committed to replace the removed playground equipment, and that our staff with Jason and I in attendance, held a public engagement open house where there was children, parents, and grandparents that gave excited feedback about options that were presented, which were on a much bigger scale than this swing set. And now we're reneging on what we presented to the community. I do have to state that I am disappointed in this process. That being said, I have shared with like a few community members who I've just happened to see or whatnot that this discussion did happen in committee of the whole, and that decision may be coming to council that may look very different than what was presented at that community open house. Obviously that's been met with a lot of frustration. So, Glenn?
I'm like Tom, I firmly agree of community participation. The money and the CRISP, and they have access to CRISP and CURB funding, plus this money is one thing. But I think to absolutely get the buy-in of the community, they're the ones who should pick out the swing set. They should pick out where they want it. It should be a community-driven thing, no different than the skating rink at Cheadle or the playgrounds in any one of our communities. It was community-driven, and there should be, they did a bang-up job down there of the cemetery, of the Field of Honor and whatnot. They have talent, and I think if we just say, yeah, we want it there because it makes sense for us, we don't live there. I would like to see them actually come out and say, this is what we want, this is the color, and go ahead and do it. Is my druthers anyway.
So saying that, we do have money for the playground equipment. They do want it in the other location where it was taken out of before. So is that, like, I'm okay if it goes back to where it was before. We did have money in the budget. We did reduce the amount. We went down to a set of swings versus what we had before. But it was in the budgeted amount before, and it didn't get addressed then. It was approved. So, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm not gonna lose any sleep over a set of swings. If it goes where they want, I'm fine with it. Just to get it over with.
We decided to fix up the arena because it got so it needed fixing up or you couldn't use it, right? So we stepped in and did that. It's not that they couldn't do it, they were just, it's the way the circumstances played out. They had a bank account and they're running a good show down there. They just need a little bit of help. And that's what CRISP and CURB money is for, is to help them out. It's in no way to take over from their community spirit.
So if council's okay with it, let's defer this RFD, and I will do some more just discussions with the community and maybe have some of the key community members get in touch with our administration and look at what current grant programs we have that they might be able to apply for. And if we need to, we can come back and look at this after that process has been looked at what's available. Alan?
Can you give some direction on how long you're deferring it, or are you going to let administration know when you want it brought back, or?
So CRISP funding, the deadline is January 31st.
I believe so, yes.
And then determinations would be made probably.
By March, usually it comes to council, I think, March, April type thing. Yeah.
Let's defer it indefinitely, and I will bring it back to administration if it needs to be brought back. Glenn?
Okay, just keep in mind, I think, Dave, you said 5-6 weeks to order them, so I guess when we get into May and there's no swings there, if there's a demand, we still need to meet that requirement to order them and then get them installed, right? So,
This can be outside of the CRISP funding too, and CURB funding a certain amount, because we have the Friends of East Wheatland raise money, and we participated in their fundraising efforts to enhance the school. I mean, the community infrastructure. I mean, that was just last year, or the year before, right? It doesn't have to be CURB and this is community grants too, but it was ratepayer, it was citizen driven, and that's the part I like about it the very most.
I would ask that we bring it back in February. I think that gives enough time to get idea on curb and crisp, and then we'll make sure we have it in the. We'll have a decision that they can be in the ground by middle of April. Then we're not waiting.
well, they won't have determined the grants by then because they have to come back to council. So perhaps you want to consider March.
I'm hoping for an early spring. Yeah, March is fine.
So, just thinking something different, you're talking about the funding that we did for the schools and whatnot, but that was new equipment. This is stuff that has been deemed unsafe, and we took it out, our staff took it out. So is that the same funding mandate that we're gonna follow in the future for anybody else as it's CRISP? Because is that the same, I'm just trying to get this in my head square, because when you take something out because it's unsafe, the community doesn't necessarily have a timeline as to when that is. It just gets, whenever the inspection that's failed, it's gone. So it may be 2 years before they can get that funding lined up. So that's something that council, I think, should consider is, this is kind of a different thing. We're maintaining what's already there and replacing what's already there. We're not doing something new. So something we're gonna come across more and more in the future, I believe, is this very thing. So, and if we wait for CRISP and CURB, it doesn't suit that need. Because it may not get approved, and it's out of our control.
Just a question to Dave. How many swing sets are there in Gleason currently? Like for public use, I should say.
There's just the one at the school site now that is not really still on Golden Hills land, right? So it's not really up to standard, I would say, because of just the location of it and the ownership.
Okay, so the 100+ children in Gleason do have access to a swing set right now, just so you're aware of that.
So, and just to clarify, what was taken out was 3 swing sets, 2 climbers with monkey bars, and a slide.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Tom?
I think going forward, we have to have a policy that we know this is going to happen, so that this can be addressed. Because I understand what Scott's saying, and I understand that, and I'm not able to communicate it, but I really do not like the fact that we come in as a county and tell you what you're going to get. There's no community in that. So what I'm looking for is something that, you know, like after 20 years or whatever, a swing set becomes condemned, there has to be a planning process so that when that's replaced, that the community gets what they want. And, you know, it may not be, you know, so you're not going to take 3 swing sets out and necessarily put 3 swing sets back in again, right? Because you after a while you sit down there and go, well, no, there's only 2 sets of swing sets are actually used, and, you know, we can spend that other money. So I think we have to develop a policy where there should be a policy in place where we know when something is going to get, so this doesn't get spoiled on us.
Your mic went off, I don't know why.
That the community knows.
So just to clarify a couple of things, we are really talking about, in my mind, there's two issues. There's the immediate issue in my mind of what's happened in Gleason, and I realize it's an unfortunate set of circumstances, but those circumstances have happened. And I think it's an ill perception that we're going in and telling them what we want. Jason and I attended a meeting with several residents. There were children there, there were parents, there were grandparents there. Dave had several options of available equipment, and he used a system where the local community helped determine the priorities for the community. It was nothing about us coming in saying we're putting this here because we've determined this is the need for the community. We came in as a municipality and said this equipment is on our land. We've determined it's not safe, and we removed a significant amount of the recreational or playground equipment that was available in that hamlet. That hamlet's also unique because it was its own municipality, independent for a long time, did a lot of these things within the community, and now we're coming in, throwing our hammer down, saying we've determined it's not safe, which I don't disagree with those actions. I'm thankful that we are keeping our ratepayers safe and that we're, assessing those things. I realize the liability is there whether we're assessing it and correcting it or not. So I appreciate that you're doing that. But what we've done is gone in, taken that out, gone in, held public consultation, said we have this $75,000 in our budget. The community was surprised that the money was there, but it was there. We did approve that, whether we were really conscientious about doing that or not. We approved that as a council. And now we're reneging on that decision. And obviously today that's the theme of my life. So there's some frustration with the process, but I realize there is a bigger issue that we are looking at as well, which is what is our role in recreation? What do we see for our future for planning for recreation equipment or things like playgrounds in our hamlets? And I think it all does tie back to some of what Shauna's even talking about for economic development. If we're not putting anything into these hamlets, people are not going to move there. There's not going to be a reason for families to stay there. If we start putting small injections of investments into infrastructure, and I realize the big things are there in Gleason. We have good water, we have good wastewater, we have some of that infrastructure that we are maintaining. These are small injections that we can put in that make these attractive communities. And I realize it is a bigger picture, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, we should be having the same conversation about Carsland and about Lyelta and about Cheadle and in all of our communities. And I realize that there are those grant programs in place, and I appreciate that, like the Curb and the Crisp. I think it's a good system to allocate funds when you don't have, to really give that autonomy to the communities to determine. There's a battery there. It's not a battery.
My battery's
Okay.
Okay, we just had a presentation here, economic development strategy on page 115, top bullet. It says we're lacking challenges, lacking upgraded and new infrastructure to support growth and settlements. That was one of the bullets. And then go down to page 119, number 4. Engage residents and businesses to create a community vision for Wheatland County. And then again, number 7, complete an asset management plan. These are all things that we are talking about that we just had a report on. It says to the fact that we have to engage our citizens for the vision they want in their community. We have to have an asset management plan for when these infrastructure fails. We know when they're going to be needing replacement, right? And it says that is one of our strongest challenges in the county is lack of quality infrastructure. So it all fits, and it all not specific to Gleason, it's the whole county wide. And I just cited, we had the granting process, we had Friends of East Wheatland process. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they're recent ones in our history that they got done what they wanted done. And the Friends of East Wheatland actually built a huge outdoor play set or gym set or whatever you, so it's there, but the citizen engagement, I think for me is number one still. Be it from Gleason or Rosebud or Cheadle or anywhere.
But I think you did have citizen input. That's where the problem, and it was planned, it was budgeted, so that's, you know, I can see in the community's eyes, why are we not doing it now?
Tom?
I think what we're having is an ideology. And I would prefer that it has to be, in my opinion, this has to be driven from the community outwards. When this is no different, we are going to inject ourselves into other people's lives, and even if they need it, like even if this still has to be there. Start losing that fact that the community comes to us. It's just the way we're looking at things. And the way of society now is that it's changing. It always used to be, the community used to, we're changing sort of what community is. And I don't want to lose that. I want people that live in a certain community to look out for their community first. And the funding is there. It's not the fact that this has got nothing to do with the money. In my mind, the money is it's the process and the fact that the people have to want it. Like we've got the funding formulas there, and if they need more, if the formula has to be changed and it has to be bigger, so be it. We'll make it bigger, so that. But it still has to be from the community out. Like it's got to be, when we start putting our hand in here and saying, you got to do this and you got to do that. And I understand with liability and all that kind of stuff, there's some of that there. But when we just, arbitrarily decide, like, would that a playground equipment, liability or not, if that was still the municipality, the town of Gleason, would that equipment be there or not today? And so I understand where everything, but that we tore it out, we took it away.
It does go, sorry to interrupt, it does go beyond that. We did that, and we will need to do that in the future. I absolutely agree. We are completely having two conversations, and I realize they're tied. We went beyond tearing out the equipment. We went and had a public consultation evening where we presented, I don't know how many you had, 12 options for playground equipment, different configurations, different colors, different activities, different age groups, two different locations, and people, prioritize those through a dotmocracy, I've heard it called, and determined what the priorities for the community were. That engagement did take place. I don't know, it seems like a couple of times we're making decisions as a council, validating something, and then changing the course of direction, which is creating like a perception of us that is not good with some of our ratepayers. And I don't want to be known for being fickle or for, making these decisions. And then unless new information comes, like if there's new information that came to light that changed our rationale. So we had made this decision and now we are changing the decision to this based on this rationale. What I'm like, and I guess maybe we do make a justification with this, but there hasn't really been a change in rationale. I will go back to the community and say you can apply through Curb and Crisp and say we screwed up because that's what we did. I will do that.
Well,
Jason?
After listening to everyone, I do understand where Amber and Tom are coming from. I think we screwed up on process. We shouldn't have held the public meeting, but we did. We took the swing sets out without telling that we were going to do that. There's not a lot of options in Gleason. I will not make that mistake. That's a promise that I will not look past funding again, because spending like we are going to spend should never happen. But we made the mistake, and perhaps even though we spent how much money on the arena, we're giving them choices on the school, we're leading their hopes on, even though I don't believe this council's willing to carry out on those hopes and act on their plans. We're giving them that taste. Now we're setting ourselves up to give them, to pay for brand new equipment. Not only swings, but full everything. And to me, I don't agree with it, but I'm going to vote for it because we screwed up big time. We screwed up on the arena, and we are screwing up on the school. But we have to live with that, and I can bet my ass that I'm not going to make that again. And I will not give any more money to communities that don't help themselves. And that's a promise, not a warning.
But Gleason is working very hard. They're working on multiple projects in the community. You just have to walk by the library, walk by the community center, look at what they're doing. And to say that you won't. Yeah, no, I'm not saying they're alone in that.
A lot more attention in Gleason. I'm going to vote for it because we screwed up.
Part of the reason I believe Gleason was identified as a potential area to look at redevelopment is because they have wastewater and water capacity.
And we are taking money raised in the West and by the farmers and putting it into a community that does not earn us a dime. Until we have jobs, stable jobs, and I fully agree with Shauna when she says the east side of Gleason along the railroad tracks and the East Gleason access is a perfect spot. But until we are getting revenue from that spot, until we have companies and businesses there employing people of Gleason so that money can go back into Gleason, we have to look at it as a greater whole. And we have recreation, we have no recreation in the West when at least 60% of our population's in the West. And I'm from the East, and I'm saying this. I think it's absurd that we're spending this kind of money in Gleason. We don't have a choice. We've pushed ourselves into a corner and we can't get out of it. But we have to stop that. I mean, we can't continue to let Gleason do what they're doing. I think
Gleason didn't do this. Let's remember that. This was on our budget. We identified that, like, this was put into our budget. We
I know,
approved
and
it.
I should
We
have
made the commitment to
caught it.
this,
I should
and
have
our
caught it.
staff held the public engagement.
I should have caught it. Not going to happen again. But I'm just saying, in the future, I cannot commit much to Gleason because we've been on council for a year and a month, and we've probably put in more money into Gleason than the last 10 years or 20 years. And when every other community out there is wondering, wonder why that is. When Cheadle doesn't have a skating rink, Carsland doesn't have an outside skating rink, Carsland doesn't have a skating rink, their curling rink's nothing. There's nothing out there. Lyelta is growing faster than anywhere else. What is there in Lyelta?
And
Not
I
even a
agree
gas station.
completely with you.
I'm just saying, this is going to happen. They're going to get a brand new playground, but that'll be the last thing, and they have to understand that for a while.
Glenn, you had comments?
There's one other thing everything that the county's done so far has been community-driven. They come and they apply for money, they get money wherever they get it, and they put in the playground. This is a deviation from it. The county's going to go put us in a playground. We're going to pick the spot. We're going to do the work, and that is different than what we've ever done before. And that is the part I want to avoid. As soon as we go in and do that, the volunteer, everything, it becomes like another Strathmore. And are we prepared to do that in all the other hamlets and villages, for that matter, in the county? Why can't they come in as a delegation and present to us what their dream is, like much the Friends of East Wigland does, where they have a project? Come in and pitch it to us and ask for some help. Tell us how much money they've raised, how much volunteering they've done. That's what the Friends of East Wheatland did, and they come in half a dozen times, I'm thinking at least. And they got money from wherever they could, and they worked very hard at it, and they got something there that they're very proud of. I don't see any different. If it's the money, if Galician can get together as a community and do it, the money is second thought. It's building their community spirit. That is paramount to me. And if Galician can do it, I don't, good for them, and I'll support them. And if it's Muirfield next, or wherever, that's what I want to see. I don't want to go in and start, we're going to fix you all up. I know we didn't have any chance or choice with the arena. It was just too late. If we had had number 7 here, asset management, we know it was coming in 5 years, we could have prepared for it, but we can't. That's water under the bridge. But we still got time on this playground stuff, because it's winter now, and they won't be putting in no slides or swings till 5-6 months from now. So that's what I would like to see. Have them come in, do a presentation, do some work. It's not on the county's back.
So just one comment in response to that, just 1 second, if that's okay. I think this, and I don't know exactly the process that this went through, but somebody at Wheeline County identified that there was going to be playground equipment. My assumption is that somebody identified that there was playground equipment that was going to be removed and put that into our budget, put it into our capital budget. That, my understanding from one of the presentations was that that was identified from somebody, and that's why that line item was put into our budget. We approved that. I'm confident that if the stakeholders, the ratepayers in Gleason had been told, we've identified that this playground equipment is unsafe and it's going to need to be removed, can you please consider that in your CRISP or CURB funding applications for the next year or like some kind of timeline? Instead, the way we as a municipality chose to deal with it was by integrating that into our capital budget and then holding public consultation. At no point have we gone in and said, we're doing this or we're putting it there. Dave came in and very democratically presented options. The community said we would prefer it here, not here. This is where we notice the youth or the children gather. This is where, you know, this is a beautiful green space with lots of trees. This is where we would like our playground. At no point did we go in and say that we're forcing this here or that type of thing. But as a municipality, we identified that there was a need for that playground equipment. We're continuously talking about this balance that we are juggling between ag fragmentation, trying to direct growth into our hamlets. The way we do that is by that is one part of it, but that's a chicken and egg thing too, right? So when those developers come in and are looking, is there quality of place for their employees to live? And they might come in and they will come into the Goldfinch area structure plan and they're going to say there's some quality of place there. Carsland's a beautiful place. There's the Bow River, there's recreation. I don't know what it has for playground equipment. And I agree that the process of this whole thing, I completely agree. It should have been the way Glenn said. I 100% agree with you. 16 months ago, whenever that was put into our capital budget, and that was a long time ago, probably prior to us initially in an interim capital budget would be my guess. And it does come down to we didn't go through it line by line. I admit I did not find, none of us we're aware of it, but we made that commitment. Glenn, absolutely.
The money's in the budget, it's there. How we spend it is still up for debate. They come in and they want that whole budget and the president and the county council votes for it, fine. That is part of. But if they don't take ownership, I don't want to go down that road. I don't know if anybody here does. But the money is in the budget, yes. They come in here and ask for it, and we give it to them, great. Who is doing the work of the planning? Who is doing the work of installing it? And who's going to do the work of keeping it up? Those are important community-minded questions. And it's not too late to have them start that process.
And I completely agree with you, except for the too late part. We have done the consultation. If we had presented the information and said, we have a certified inspector, all of this equipment, however many 8 pieces of equipment are coming out, plan for it. But instead, it was in our budget, and we went into the community and said, here's your options. It's like, and I am fine with going back to them and saying, now you need to present to council. We came to your community, we gave you options for playground equipment. Now please come back to council and apply for it. And yes, it's in the budget. Like, it's the whole process thing I'm just clearly having an issue with. But I'm at council's will, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Tom?
I agree with Glenn. And maybe, and what Glenn is, I have a way easier problem, or a way of digesting what Glenn has said, in the fact that here we are, we're going to say 21,000 right now, so we go 21,000. But if we can get, all I need to see is buy-in from the people at Gleason to know that this is what needs to be there. I wasn't at the meeting. You barely made the meeting. You know, if they come in, you know, I'm with Glenn. I fully see that the full thing will be funded, but we have, you know, I just don't want to see this top-down approach. And we've screwed up until now. But if we do this, if we continue doing the way we're doing, in my mind, we're still continuing the screw up. I don't want this to be the precedent. I don't want, like Glenn says, I don't want this to be Strathmore. I don't want my community out there. I don't want Cheadle out there going, well, if we don't take care of it, you know, the county will take care of it. That is not the way I want it to work. I want it to work that I want to see the community involved in these decisions. So, you know, if they come in the next couple of months, give us a proposal, show us what they want to do, and ask us for, I can't imagine they'd be turned down. It just, my perception of how this is being done is so top down that it's not, I think we've made a mistake and they're suffering for it. But I think it can be, the process can be fixed, and it can be relatively, it's inconvenient for them. I understand that, but it has to be the process that it has to be community driven.
However, do you think you could get the community to come in and do an ask?
Absolutely. I'm confident that they'll do. I wish that you guys could see what's being done in Gleason, because I think you're actually getting a misperception of the community of Gleason. There is a lot of community spirit there. And yeah, absolutely. Anybody who comes to the CP Train holiday experience, you're going to see the community spirit that's there and the work that they've done on the community center. You'll drive right by the library and see the work that's been done on that. You're going to see a lot of evidence of community spirit, and I'm confident they'll come back. It's just the process that I'm responsible for as their liaison with the county is frustrating to me. But I will absolutely take it back to them and find a different way for us to deal with this. I'm confident they will do it, absolutely. There's already a small group of people.
Want to go on to the next item then and just keep this one in advance?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, Dave. Memorial bench policy.
So again, this one is as directed by council, the same as the previous one, and the following one is as well. If there's any questions, Dave's here to answer those.
So we did review the Memorial Bench Program proposed policy in, I believe, our planning and priorities meeting. Does anybody have any questions? If not, is somebody prepared to make a motion to approve the policy? Donna?
I move that Wheeland County Council approve the memorial bench policy as proposed.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? And the public tree policy.
Opposed.
Are there any questions or any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Oh, Donna?
Before you go, I just wanted to, the Ag Society got a hold of me and said that this week is they're taking down the old rink. Someone is, from the hamlet. They want to keep the lights. If you could just put them to the side, not for that project, but they want to have them kept, please.
Okay, we were just I think the plan was just take the boards down because that's the immediate safety hazard. The lights would,
Okay.
lights are gonna stay there.
They
So
were just worried that you were going to take them.
Because one, oh, you,
I'd have to look. I don't. Here, I'll go look. I might have it in the file. We have an RFD before us regarding the Fire Safety Education Coalition.
Madam Chairman, I don't have anything to present on that. It's fairly straightforward. If there's any questions, I might be able to answer those. I'm here to answer those.
Would somebody like to make a motion to direct administration to enter into the agreement? Jason, all in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you. The next one is the addition of rescinding bylaw 2018-07 and revamping the bylaw. There's been a number of changes to it, and with the recommendations of the fire commissioner, I would think it'd be best to rescind this bylaw and start not from fresh. We'll be using that bylaw as the start point, but we'll clean it up and make it a little bit clearer to understand. With that many changes, it's pretty prudent that we make sure we start from the right footing. So, and we will engage with the associations in the villages in regards to that. And I will send an email out, depending on what council's decision is in regards to this request for decision.
So just to reiterate, in case anybody from council hasn't read your email, has everybody read the email? From this morning?
Yeah, the fire commissioners.
The fire commissioner's report?
Yes.
It's 3 pages.
And I apologize for sending it out so early. I was going to send it out last night, but I figured it probably not so good to send it out at midnight because I didn't get it till 11:07 last night.
10 minutes. You got one.
I'll just very briefly summarize. We received a report from Kevin Jess, the fire commissioner's office. After reviewing our fire bylaw, he had some feedback for us regarding some substantive changes to the bylaw that we passed first reading for. And he was recommending that we reconsider that bylaw. And through Alan's analysis of it, the changes would be so significant that they wouldn't be like minor edits. So we should start with first reading again. And so, and what Alan is saying is that the process will look different this time, that prior to, or as we're developing our draft bylaw, there will be consultation with our fire departments and our village partners, as well as possibly ratepayers, just through that process of development. Okay. Okay.
I'd like to move that we rescind the fire bylaw. Number escapes me from right now.
2018-07.
2018-07.
Are there questions or discussion?
I'll ask, I know the answer, but can we get our money back from the lawyer? Can I make a formal motion to get our money back from the lawyer?
Any other questions or comments regarding the rescinding of bylaw 2018-07? All in favor? The motion is carried. All opposed? Motion is carried.
Ellen, when you send out an email to the associations, would you include the commissioner's letter too in that communication?
Madam Chairman, I am sending out what I got from the commissioner as well as what council's motion just was.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. We're ready for corporate and financial services report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. So on page 214 of your agenda package is the corporate and financial services report. So last month, there was a request made to pull other municipalities on what they're doing for storage and security of their backup data. So I've included that as an attachment. We've kept the municipalities anonymous because we don't want to kind of reveal who's storing stuff where. So.
I did want to share, I appreciate the work that you did on that. I actually was just having a conversation with a couple of the councillors from Starline County, and they were glad that we were actually looking into like just how we're backing up our information, because they said they did actually lose a significant portion of their records, and that what they discovered is that while they had some fireproof safes and that type of thing, they weren't waterproof and they weren't bulldozer safe and or bulldozer proof or whatever. So well, like I recognize there's a cost to an online backup and potentially, I guess, a security risk. I know there's encryption and all of that. It is something that personally I would like to look into, just because when we look at the kind of the scope of the wildfire that came across Wheatland County last fall, you know, even a 1 kilometer or like depending on how a fire traveled, it could be a risk to our record keeping. And then if you're looking at, I think actually I have a note in here, just about like for your startup after some kind of massive event. I think, I can't remember where I read it. You had something about a pandemic plan or something. Anyways, I think it could be good for continuity.
Yes, so what I have also included is the cost for putting it into the cloud. So the initial kind of push of data would be approximately $11,000, and that's kind of a one-time fee. And then on top of that, it would be around $600 a month for the storage and kind of the sending the updates to the cloud. So what it does is it sends the updates, it doesn't send all the information again. So that's why it's just one upfront cost.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the report? Ellen, is that just an administrative consideration, like how you're backing up data, or is that something that would need to come from council, or? Okay. If there's no questions or comments, does somebody want to make a motion to accept the report? Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried.
So the next RFD, the unaudited financial statements as of September 30th, that's on starts on page 217 of your agenda package. So this is the budget versus actual for up to September 30th. Please remember that these are unaudited. So what we do is we kind of run the data 45 days after September 30th. So we do try to collect as much information postings as possible up to September 30th. So there could be outstanding expenses that aren't posted. And the reason why there would be some outstanding expenses not posted is because we don't receive vendor invoices to put that into a general ledger.
Are there any questions about the unaudited financial statements?
Just one, I just got a question on the, on note number 2, I don't know what page it is. Come on, 219 on the package, the receivables WRC loan. Do we have any idea? Like, does anybody have any idea when that money's going to come in? Like, and who do we as WRC talk to in order to straighten this out and all that kind of stuff? Like, an awful lot of money just be floating around out there.
I have similar concerns, and I'll leave that up to the WRC board representatives to speak to that. I know it's been expressed a number of times. I'm not sure where grant funding's at from the provincial government, so I think that's what they're waiting on, but maybe one of the board reps could maybe speak to that.
Federal grant money. And when I had that short visit with MPE in Edmonton, they have similar problems with similar projects with the feds and their money. To get the money from the federal government, you have to be shovel ready, and it has to be done in 2 months, and got to get everybody to work, but then they're notorious for not paying up in the end. So the last WRC meeting, if you remember, Leah was supposed to provide a report to is the person that we deal with. Who's our grant person we work with, Alberta Environment? Keith Schenner, yes. And I asked her as part of a comment when she's providing that information to ask him when we can expect her grant money. But it's really, I guess Keith can put a little pressure on, but it's the federal money. And I'm thinking at the next board meeting, maybe we should direct a letter to our MP, Martin Shields, or something. Yeah, I don't know what else to do. I got no experience. Usually they give you a grant and they give you the money. Yeah, but I'm darn sure it's all Fed money.
Well, we'll have an in once Tom is.
Any further questions on the unaudited financial statements? I believe Jason made a motion to approve. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. There's an RFD regarding a perk application and canceling the property taxes in arrears.
Yes, so on page 220 of your agenda package, so this application, what it's for is uncollectible property taxes specific to the oil and gas industry. So these companies are companies that have been in receivership. We've reviewed their financial statements, what they have left, the outstanding creditors. So a total, the county has about $460,000 of uncollected property tax. So what we can do is we can make an application to the province if we cancel these outstanding property taxes to collect the education requisition back. So the education requisition would only be on non-residential, so the M&E, we don't charge it, or they don't charge it, sorry, it's an exempt class.
Any questions?
I have a question. Is this tied to land or property or equipment?
So the property tax itself would be tied to all of the above. The education requisition would be tied specifically to non-residential class of taxation or assessment, which is taxed.
Then why do we treat this any different than public? When they don't pay their taxes, we take their property.
Well,
I don't understand that.
So through the chair, we certainly could take over the property. Like that would be no problem. But we have to remember that the property that we could take over would potentially have a significant environmental liability on it. So there's provincial funding in place at the moment, and I believe the majority of these properties are under the Orphan Well project. So the province comes in, spends a significant amount of money to reclaim the land, reclaim the soil, and kind of just get it back to its original state, because the companies themselves aren't reclaiming the land or soil kind of thing. So an option would be for the county to take over the property. However, that certainly would cost the county a significant sum of money to clean it up.
The reason I'm asking is because if we don't do anything like that, then this problem still is out there, and company number 3 can come and take ownership of them, bring them back into production, or if there's a value there, and make money again, and we could be in the same process 5 years down the road with a different company. Like, that's, the oil and gas industry is famous for this, and this is only the start from what I've heard out east of a lot of this stuff. And I don't really know the answer to it, but we have a direct line, hopefully a better line to get funding to deal with this. I don't know what the best, just to write it off like that, doesn't seem right.
So through the chair, so these companies specifically, we've kind of reviewed the financial statements. So what happens is they go into receivership, and one of the big audit companies kind of takes them over. They value all their assets. So those assets on sale, and that's the accounting value of the assets, not necessarily the fair market value for the assets. So when you take the cash of the company, the receivables of the company, and the assets of the company, and to all the creditors that they owe still as well, they're not going to recover the outstanding kind of payables that they do have. So what this the PERC program is meant to do is to provide the municipality just the funds that they have already paid over to the province for the education. So that's kind of it. If we did think or have a thought that it would be collectible, we wouldn't be applying for the PERC application. That's why the arrears are kind of back to 2015, because we kind of wait, we review documents that come in from the financial firms, and we just kind of see if there is a possibility of collection. Then you kind of understand who's going into that Orphan Well project, or sorry, Orphan Well fund, and then at that point we kind of make a determination that it is better just to collect back the 90,000 out of the 460, because we're not going to collect the property tax, unfortunately.
I'm very familiar with the receivership. I've had a company that's been, had a blow from somebody else from this. And the difference is there's value in land, and some other company that may be owed money will end up owning that site because they're owed something. And then they'll just turn over and flip it, sell it to somebody else, or start company number 3, 4, 5, and start a production again on some grant, and then the problem's over and over again. That's what I have an issue with this. And I don't know the answer to the problem. It's just something just doesn't sit right to just waive the funds, and everybody else, we deal with it a different way.
Alan?
Yeah, certainly some municipalities have had success in the past. The ones that I've talked to recently, 2 in particular, they took over some assets of an oil company 3 years ago, and they still are sitting on pipes and pump jacks in their yard. They cannot sell them. And if they were to sell them, they would sell them basically for scrap metal. This particular company, the one in particular that has most of the outstanding, I don't believe they have land. It's leased land, so they don't own land. So you don't inherit the land. Some do, but these ones that we're dealing with, in particular, the one doesn't have land that I'm aware of that they actually own. It's leased land off of farmers. So that's the reason why we're going down this road. I think one of the other things is the PERC program came into place a year or so ago, I think, Brian, wasn't it? And it came about because the assets are stripped bare on these companies. They haul them off to another site, or another company picks them up, or I don't know how it all happens. So the assets you inherit are not, there's not a lot of inherent value there. Maybe if things turned around tomorrow, maybe we could sit on that equipment in our yard for a year and be able to sell that and make money. I don't know. Crystal ball doesn't tell me what's going to happen, but currently there's not a lot of value in those assets. So,
is there any way to put a caveat on the lease site saying if you redevelop it, you have to pay back that stuff? Is there any?
I'm not sure about that. We could look into that. I'm not familiar if that's, yeah. Yeah.
I've seen it before where one company goes bankrupt, 3 years later, another company comes in, starts up, it goes bankrupt, 3 years later, another company goes in.
Yeah, the other thing that's happening too is company A will sell their assets, or another company will acquire their assets, and what they'll do is they'll strip out the good assets, and then they'll spin off the other assets to a third-party company, and then they go into receivership in 2 years. That's a common, not a common, but it has happened in the past. There is a big producer in the area that's up for sale, and has been up for sale for a number of years. I'm told by people in the know that they say this is the year it will happen in 2019. So if it does happen, then we'll see more assets either closed in, shut down, or stripped down. So I think we've seen, and our assessor has told me that we've seen a considerable amount of assets being shut in the last year. So our continued decline in our assessable value. So.
Yeah, if we can look and see if there's a way to tag a future recovery on it or some way, I don't know. Yeah.
Any further questions on the cancellation and perk? If not, can we have a motion? Thanks, Jason. All in favor? Motion carried. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Madam Chair, there is two.
Oh, you want them separate?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the province specifically asked for two
So
separate.
Jason, you moved to cancel the property taxes in arrears? Can we have a motion to direct administration to apply to the perk program? Thanks, Tom. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Thanks, Brian. And we have the human resources policies. I have one question. I'm just going to it. And I'm not an HR person, and obviously whoever did this isn't somebody who's passionate about this. It's very robust. On page 231, when they're talking about, it's under the performance management, performance improvement, under performance and career development. It talks about any performance gaps or deficiencies that have been identified or observed prior to or after a formal performance assessment should be discussed in a separate meeting. So I'm just trying to figure this out. So you would have a performance review where you would talk about all the good things, and then you would have a separate meeting where you would talk about any gaps identified?
Yes, so those are kind of two separate functions.
Okay.
So what you would kind of do is you'd have your annual review. You'd kind of talk about like what's happened in the previous year, future goals, and then kind of the separate one with the performance improvement plan that would kind of identify areas of weakness and areas that how they can improve. And what we want to do is we want to kind of help and assist anyone that may be struggling in certain areas and clearly define expectations.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on the human resources policy updates? Can we have a motion to approve the revisions? Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We have the transportation and agriculture report. Do you guys need a break or are you good? Power through? 5 minutes. Take your time. We'll call the meeting back to order. Yes, it's a good afternoon. Still. So Mike had a transportation and agriculture report as part of the package.
Good afternoon, council. You can see my, sorry? Oh, afternoon. I thought you were looking at me. You can see my attached package there if you have any questions on it. The crews are basically shutting down for the winter here, the ones that aren't. We have a couple crews remaining. We're actually finishing, you remember at the meeting last week, we have 2 bridge culverts that are going in the west access road for Rockyford. So they are finalizing one this week and are hoping to start the next one beginning of next week and finish it just before Christmas, hopefully. So those 2 bridge files will be completed, and we put in an application for funding for that on Friday. So hopefully we get that back.
Donna, you have a question?
I do. So the pavement that you've kind of patched on Main Street or Railway Avenue for Carsland, will it be, I'm getting lots of comments about it. Are you going to come in and kind of make a better pass? It's not really, it's patchy. I mean, it looks like a patch. It doesn't look very professional, or we'll have to wait till spring, but was there plans to come back yet? Or no?
See, through the chair, a section of road to that we have the full road.
Okay. And then it'll be
We know that we're
paved.
doing patches all the way along.
You're going to wait till all it's complete and then go.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's no point doing the pavement now.
perfect. And, so can I do my, whereabouts is the off-site levy for the wastewater? Carsland? Like,
Oh, as far as the procedure?
yeah,
Yeah, actually, I met with the engineer on Friday. Basically, I'm gonna bring it back probably in the new year,
the council?
a draft ready. Likely, it's a pretty extreme plan, for sure. And so we've quantified it by, basically, we're looking at an area the size of the area. Way out of the realm of what we. Looking at the procedure now. We have phasings all the way along, but. Big area for sure, but bring back something reasonable. We'll have the extreme.
Okay, thank you.
So that's an update.
Would it be costed out as per acre offsite levy? That's what I was familiar with before, or or have you got that figured out?
Oh,
We typically put those as a flow rate when we do the application. We can do it per lot, per acre, per door, sometimes if it's residential. So that'll be a part of the scenario is what makes sense, because we have industrial, commercial, and residential all in that area structure plan, so we'll have to structure it properly. And with that, there's water, wastewater, storm, roads, and Actually, one of the major ones that we're contemplating is that rail crossing in the at-grade. We actually meet the threshold for a elevated crossing there, which is $20, $30 million kind of thing. So just goofy numbers for nothing that we need there. I mean, this is really, really far out, 150-year planning scheme
Yeah.
that we don't need. So we're going to have to see how we can scale it back to make it reasonable for us to accept and for the community to build into.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple questions that I should probably know. When it says a new furnace was installed in Rocky Ford, was that at the waste transfer maybe?
Yeah, that was at the waste transfer
Okay.
site, yeah.
And then I just don't know what CCC is under Capital Works.
Okay, so.
Oh, right, okay.
when construction's done.
Okay, perfect. Now I remember. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Mike, we were talking to transportation up at RMA, and we we're specifically talking about the Rocky Ford Road. And I inquired about them milling it off. I don't know if they'll do it or not, or if they're going to consider it. I would like you, I think the county should consider doing it if the province doesn't. Because if we don't do it, when they repave it, we're not going to have a road that's going to last any time long. So I think we might as well mill it off to begin with. It'll be less stuff to mill off, and have them repave it, and we'll have a better road that we won't have to touch for a while.
Do you want to try a new battery?
So through the chair, we have made note of that from a number of areas on that road.
Mm-hmm.
Discuss what we're doing right now. That's not all of that, so. What our recommendation is on it, rather than just take theirs of overlaying it and handing it off, and make sure that we're comfortable with accepting the road, that we're gonna have to, it may look good for a couple of years if we don't do the proper treatment on the subsurface, then we're gonna have to spend the money very shortly after they hand it over to us again, so. Yeah, no, we made note of that definitely right after that meeting.
Okay.
Gotta follow up on it.
And then in talking to Molly, the Reeve from Newell County, they get lots of paving done in their county, but they pay for half of it on the provincial roads. The province keeps the roads. And it probably works in their accounting for the province more in a favorable position than what we're asking for. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be running some numbers, what it will cost us to pay for half of it, or if we do the upgrading, or otherwise we keep continually have to fix our roads up because all the heavy traffic's on our gravel roads. I mean, it does cost us money not having them things paved, and maybe we should be looking at a different approach. Maybe we don't need to acquire, maybe we get them paved, but however we get them roads done. I'm thinking in the long term, it's probably cheaper for us to pay for half of it than to acquire the road. I'm thinking 20, 30 years out.
Yeah, that's right, because that's the problem, they can't maintain them already, and then we upgrade. I like the idea, I hope to get some roads paved that way, but that's what I'm worried about is us putting in 10 million, well, more than 10 million on some of these roads.
Much more, yeah.
And then the province saying, well, we're not gonna take care of it, and they just let it go to poor condition.
Yeah, no, through the chair, that is definitely the last 5 years, we've heard the same story, is that they don't have the money. And I'm sure an incentive from us would help them bump that up the priority list. But, I mean, that's something we did the numbers back in 2012. We haven't had them updated since of what that actually costs us for maintenance, or would cost us for maintenance and paving. So if you'd like, I can redo those for the new year here, and at least get a ballpark of what we're looking at for,
I'm thinking
Especially
our-
842, can you check on the
on the 842, yeah.
especially for our next committee of the whole, or whenever we get a chance to go over the, while we're on the roads, I don't know if you ever got a chance to look at the washouts on the Rocky Ford Road, or if anybody's found them yet. I've talked a couple of times and nobody knows where they can't find them.
Yeah, no.
I'm just, it's been, since the road's been built, we gotta do something with them. I'm just thinking somebody should come maybe pick me up and I'll go out and show them where I got 2 washouts. I got a load of dirt dumped in the ditch in one spot where the water has to run out the farmer's field and around and back to the dirt spot and go down the ditch. And I got another one where maybe the culvert was put in the wrong place, a little bit of earthmark. Can fix that spot up too. But they just don't seem to get, and the landowners are getting a little bit of impatient.
No, if I can meet you on Friday, if that works for you, and we can,
Friday,
or we can set up a date sometime in the next
Okay.
week here.
maybe, it's already got 3 things on Friday.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'll get together with
We'll
you
get,
after.
I'll contact and we'll get together and go through it.
So move.
Donna?
Quiet speaker. The motion that we vote on. I think Margaret can hear me even. My mic's not on.
We have an RFD regarding a lease.
Yes, so this is a follow-up, or the original RFD for this came to the November 6th meeting. So this is for the lease of the land that we utilized for the Goldsmith gravel pit down by Clooney. So we had an agreement with the previous landowner that, I believe it was a 5 or 10-year lease. They were able to lease that for $1 as part of the agreement for us purchasing it. That lease is now expired, so we are looking to re-enter into a lease with a new, or with another person, with another owner. So the last meeting, there was a request to bring forward some details as far as what the policy says for leasing in the county here, and then have a discussion about that, basically. So you can see on the second page here, we have the county leasing policy. So basically, in effect, we offer it to the adjacent landowners, and if there's more than, well, if there's only one, then we would take that as a public tender. We would take that out. If there's more than one, then we look at the rates and then bring it back to council for decision. So, yeah, that's what we're intending to do with this, and if there's different direction, we can look at that.
As I said in the previous meeting when this came in, I understood the policy on adjacent landowners, and I would rather it see go straight to tender without adjacent landowners having first priority, because, I mean, not only in this case, but there could be other cases where the person farming it doesn't own adjacent land, or his son, maybe he doesn't farm anymore and his son farms the land and he doesn't own land surrounding it. And I mean, farmers don't just farm adjacent landowner. We have stuff all over the place, and I think it's worthwhile, and I think it's more fair to the community as a whole to open it up for tender. I don't think you should limit it to adjacent landowners.
Alan, you had a comment?
Yeah, so this is our policy currently, so if council wants us to revisit the policy, we could bring it back to the planning and policy, or planning priorities meeting, or the committee of the whole in February. But this one, I think we would like to, do we need to deal with this one today, Mike? this land lease?
No, the lease has been expired for a bit, so we can, it's not imminent to have this decision made right now.
So if council wants us to reopen that discussion, we can certainly do that, or entertain a motion, one or the other.
Well, I mean, so, and maybe this goes back to process and putting the cart before the horse. Can we go against this policy and then come back and revisit this policy? Yeah. Just take out A is really what I got out of it.
The first
AC.
right of refusal to adjacent landowners.
Yeah, AC, D.
I think, again, to ensure process, that we have a policy that council's approved. I'd rather bring
Yeah,
back the
that's fine.
policy and council revise the policy than go against the policy. We can't,
Okay.
as administration, council could say, yeah, we want to go against the policy. We could bring that in February. It's not going to cause jeopardy for this particular lease at this time, from what I'm hearing from Mike, so I think that'd be the best.
Then
So
I
let's
will-
put it on the committee of the whole for February 27th and
I will
for
make that
discussion.
motion.
That might become a negotiation point in purchasing new land, though. If you take that out of there. Someone wants to sell their land to us to mine gravel, and then they don't. You need to think about all the ramifications of that, right? So.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor to refer this to committee of the whole, to have the policy re-examined. Any questions or comments regarding that? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's passed. We have an RFD regarding wastewater in Rosebud.
So moved.
Any questions? Discussion? Mike, did you have anything you wanted to say about it?
Not unless there's questions for me?
I just have a question, the lease portion for the same lands, is there interest in that? Or is it just good faith?
So through the chair, this was basically a carbon copy of what I brought to council in 2016, so I left that in there because that was the offer to them back in 2016. So I haven't discussed it with them if they're looking for, with the developer.
But it keeps that possibility there if there is that interest.
Yep. And through the chair, just so
approval
everyone's
or-
aware, I have forwarded this RFD on to the developer yesterday, so they're aware, and they have contacted me that they received it, so.
Any other questions or comments? Alan?
Just a question, Mike, the application for the grant funding for the lagoon has been submitted, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Of this resolution for the Rosebud meeting on Friday?
There's an RFD regarding the Ag Services Board, Provincial Conference and Farm Tech.
Thank you. So through the chair, this is just a approval for attendance of both the ASB members for the Provincial ASB Conference in Calgary on the 21st and 24th of January, as well approval if the ASB members do not attend that, then they attend the 2019 Farm Tech Conference in Edmonton.
We have a motion.
Also move.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is passed. We had correspondence in our
Oh, I
package.
just have a question.
Sorry?
Well, maybe so I would like to attend both and I'll pay for the Farm Tech one, but would Gay still be able to book those rooms for me by any chance?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
No problem, yeah. Yeah, and so, sorry, as just to follow up on that, if everyone could forward their request to Russ Montrath, just to ensure we have a quantities number on that.
I would say it's like the farm type of ASB prevention. Phenomenal.
Turn your mic on.
The Grand Prairie was, where it was the worst thing about it, but that was probably by far the best conference I've attended while being in council. The topics were much more what we discussed, not only agriculture, but solar energy, wind energy. It was very good.
Any other questions or comments? Glenn?
In January, we have a regional meeting, partnership meeting. I'm thinking if we're not around, or a lot of us aren't around, maybe we want to reschedule, I don't know.
Well, it all depends.
How many are going, I guess?
Yeah, because I was the only one that went last year, and I wouldn't want to schedule just because of me. If I have to miss a night.
Wheatland Regional Partnership, 7 o'clock. We're hosting.
Okay.
We haven't planned that. How many people?
Since Calgary. So.
Yeah, actually, it was just, when I looked at the agenda, it was just like registration on the 21st, so we should be okay.
We are? There's no tower? Conference did to me last year.
Okay, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Glenn. I believe we're going to leave the Wheatland Regional Partnership. Was that the consensus?
And what time is that at?
7 p.m.
I believe I didn't have it in there.
So we had correspondence in our package. Did anybody have any questions or comments regarding the correspondence?
I just wanted to make a comment, Madam Chairman, on the letter that I sent to Daryl Dombrowski from the town of Drumheller in regards to the bridge. So Daryl had sent me the most recent inspection done on November 20th in regards to the bridge number 11 on 11X, or 10X, sorry. The severe corrosion at the bottom chord of east truss near abutment 2, ATU thickness gauge was used to determine and found that approximately 50% of loss of the vertical leg. So it's in fairly rough condition. So in collaboration with myself, the town of Drumheller has restricted loads to 3 tons until the repairs can be made and the evaluation can be completed or replacement of this bridge. So it's in very rough shape. So if you get an opportunity to talk to any transportation minister perhaps or something like that, you want to certainly identify the concern with that bridge. That's the one just on the edge of Wayne. And essentially it services, I think Councillor Armstrong told me about 7 or 8 citizens in that area use that basically as a route into Drumheller. So it's not a high traffic bridge for sure. It's probably a lower priority for Drumheller, but they are working with us to try to get funding for that. So if they can get STIP funding, it would be fantastic. We've applied for STIP funding for those 2 bridges that we talked to transportation on. That paperwork actually I just signed just now and finalized. So hopefully we can get funding for this bridge to get it repaired because it does service our ratepayers probably more than it does Drumheller. So.
Is it on that road with 7 or 8 bridges on?
It's iconic. Thanks for the update, Alan. Any other questions or comments about the correspondence? If not, could we have a motion to accept? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Anywhere else? I know we don't want to keep talking about it, but I want to get it over with. And I don't know if we need Dave here for me to make a motion. We need Scott here.
We probably need Scott.
No, it's okay. It's Jason, you guys might want to duck. The sky might be falling.
Do we need a 2-minute break?
I don't know where he is. We don't need a break.
He said don't wait for him.
He's
Okay,
coming
well,
back. Okay, go.
one less, I guess, to worry about, eh? I will move that Wheeline County Council go ahead with originally planned Gleason playground equipment as discussed in the committee of the whole meeting on November 13th? 14th. With, sorry, I just gotta find it here. November 14th,
Gleason Playground Equipment.
with the full, on the large south park on the north end, I think it was proposed, of that park.
The non-school park, whatever
Yeah,
that.
the
I
non,
forget
like
the
the larger,
address.
the large, the
Where
larger
the public
park.
identified they would like the
Yes,
playground
where
equipment.
the public identified that they would like the playground. And the desired equipment can be seen on the agenda. I don't know the item numbers, but those are the agenda. I told you the sky was falling. And I will explain myself. The only reason this is happening is because then I can say no to everything else they ask for in my term. And
We're not going to cancel the lagoon liner
I will
later,
not
right?
ever miss a capital. This was my fault. I will take full I should have
It's
found
all
that.
of ours. It's
I
all of
should have
ours.
found that out in the capital, and I would have canceled if I had the chance. But it's in the budget. We went through public hearings. But I promise you, I will not give another dime to Gleason.
Is there questions or comments?
That's my motion. All of that, Margaret. No, I'm not.
The $75,000 project. Tom? Glenn?
So what's the process going to be? Is the county going to go and dig a hole and plant it where we feel like it? Or is the community going to come and,
us where they wanted it, though. We were there at that meeting.
So Glenn, the process that happened the evening that we did the public consultation was Mr. Rhymes had maps of potential locations that we could place playground equipment, and the ratepayers used dot stickers to indicate where they preferred equipment. I believe if you're talking about specifically on that lot, I don't think that's a huge playground. Or like a huge park.
yeah, I know what it says. The part I have, it didn't happen in this room, so my ratepayers in Rosebud or any other place has access to that. So in the future, what are we going to do? Just one or two counselors or staff or go into a community and say, we'll have an open house and this is what you get? I don't like that process. I want to have it open in this room. How we spend all our money. That's,
I agree with Glenn because this is a special animal. This was instigated by staff. We were unaware of it. And now we're trying to figure our way through this. And I believe that even though I believe that they will get funding for their equipment, there has to be a process. There has to be an ask for, this has to come before council. I agree with Glenn. From the very beginning, this whole process was backwards. We don't want it to happen again. So we have to, I think we have to maintain continuity. And I'm saying that, I'm not, I will vote against this recommendation.
So the process moving forward will be, and I've instructed staff, we have a person that'll do an inspection, probably annually, on the arena's playground equipment. If he sees something that's in imminent danger, council will be notified that it's going to be removed. And that was the process that was supposed to be followed on this. And unfortunately, we had a staff member that wasn't aware or whatever. It didn't happen. So that's the process moving forward. So I assure you that's what has been communicated to staff.
Glenn?
And also, when you're doing the inspections, can we be warned 5 years out or for planning purposes?
Inspections have to be done annually. You heard that from the insurer.
Right.
And if there's something that's found, that could happen anytime, Glenn. I can't give you
know
5
that.
years warning.
I know
I think
that.
Glenn's just saying, so Dave indicated at those school swings, for example, he anticipates their lifespan will be
Yes.
2
Yeah.
years or 5 years, so that we can go then to our ratepayers and say, our inspection is okay for this year, we don't need to remove the equipment, it's certified, but we anticipate that next year or in 2 years or like, just so that our ratepayers and our communities can plan.
We can say it's estimated it's going to be 20 years.
Right.
But if there's damage to a swing or something like that that makes it unsafe, we have to take it out of service right away. Or repair. Okay. Or repair it, yeah, that's correct.
And it's not our staff that are doing it, that this is safety issues mandated by the province, I'm thinking.
They're CSA, they're Canadian standards. They're standards, they're
They're
not,
standards.
they're
We're just
not
the one-
mandated that you have to do that, but if somebody gets hurt there and we know that it's not meeting the standard,
Yeah.
that's a problematic, as you guys heard from the insurance. I don't need to go on anymore.
There is a motion on the floor. Are there any further questions or comments? All in favor? So my assumption, the way it was presented at the public engagement, was that the county would be responsible for putting in the equipment, like the installation, if that's what you're asking about. The site selection was done through public consultation at the meeting in the community, not right down to like specifically within that park precisely where the playground would be. We did indicate that there would be follow-up to the consultation, so perhaps the exact placement could be part of that follow-up to determine whether they want it at the east end or the west end or the southwest corner, where, like, I don't know. It's quite an open, beautiful space, so I think we could get some input into that if that's required. And then what was your other question about the
And
process?
the other question is, are we doing the work for county doing the work? And if we are we doing it pro bono, or does it come out of the budget?
My understanding is that the cost of the project included installation and the site preparation, and that was what Dave presented at the meeting. Because there was questions about how expensive it would be if we need new, I forget what type of like material he recommended for the surface underneath, but he said that was all integrated into the project.
So if the community wanted to, they could install it themselves and have more capital to buy enhanced equipment if they so choose.
It wasn't presented that way at the public consultation. I don't know.
But if it includes installation.
Madam Chair, that certainly could be done, as long as it meets the standard. And that's the concern that we've had in the past, And that's what's come out of some of these inspections, is people have done things with great intentions, done a lot of work, but it doesn't meet any kind of standards, and now we got safety issues with these things. And we've had, you know, potential people get hurt. I mean, maybe there hasn't been, but maybe there will be. So that would be the only thing. Yep, there is that
So
potential.
perhaps in the follow-up consultation, because at that meeting, the strong message was that this wasn't the end of the consultation. It would be brought back forward once their choice, like once they had determined their priorities, that was brought back to council. There was a communication list that was created at that public input evening, and we could take that back to them and maybe discuss that possibility.
Sorry, I wasn't here for the motion. Is this for the full amount or for just the swings?
The full amount.
I know. I'm not gonna sleep tonight. I'm gonna take like 7 buckets.
Are there further questions or comments?
What happens if there's a tie?
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Oh,
Opposed? Opposed? The motion is carried.
oh, it's gonna be a long day.
Lesson learned.
Okay, Margaret, do you need a motion for correspondence?
Yeah, we did.
Did we? Okay. We do have
Tom, I'll buy it here.
3 in-camera sessions. If we can have a motion to go in camera, please. Can we have a motion to go in camera?
I'll make a motion to go on camera.
All in favor?